Flink is about a boy and his Bigfoot, kind of how these two orphans in each of their worlds finding each other and create a kind of a new, untraditional kind of family. You know, I was raised on with those bad 1970s movies about Bigfoots, and they were kind of these, you know, scary shockumentary things shot with, you know, fuzzy footage. And I love the Bigfoot story. It's like, what is Bigfoot? What is he? And I hadn't really seen any stories that really expanded who Bigfoot was. And so I was able to create this myth, kind of, you know, what are they like? What's their magic like? Why do they exist? And things like that. In the book, it was fun to kind of explore that and create that and kind of create my own version of Bigfoot. Sure. Well, I just felt like I couldn't really tell the story of Bigfoot without referencing the most famous footage ever shot of Bigfoot, that, you know, crummy 8mm footage of Bigfoot running and doing the look back. And in my story, that is the Bigfoot Flink. It's his mother. You could say, on one hand, that the story deals with loss and trust. On the other hand, I would say it deals with prejudice. And that's where the reciprocal trust comes in. It's by contrast. At the very start, Bigfoots and people are very, you know, prejudiced. They have wrong ideas about each other. And then through putting these two characters through this kind of a crucible, this ordeal in the woods, they learn to trust each other, and you end up creating a great bond, in fact, among the strongest bonds that you can, a father-son relationship. And suddenly being a human or being a Bigfoot isn't that important. What's important is that we share this humanity or this relationship. And out of that relationship comes trust. And it wouldn't be there without loss. So some of my stuff deals with kind of these characters have profound loss, and it's almost an opportunity for someone to shake their fist at life and say, it's so unfair, but it's also an opportunity for good things to happen, and truly revelatory good things to happen that couldn't exist without that loss in the first place. You know, I like black and white, first of all, because I'm a very binary thinker. Things are very black and white to me. I'm really comfortable in my mind with segmenting things off as being either black or white. And so artwork is similar in that when you lay down a ink line, there's no gray in it. It's either there or it's not. And so to me, the great artists are the ones that can lay that black line down with confidence and have it look good, without having to scrub a bunch of gray and a bunch of rendering, you know, into the artwork to make it work. So for me, the greats, you know, that do that are Bill Watterson. You know, Calvin and Hobbes is so gestural with the ink and brush. Watterson is, I should say, is so gestural. And yet there's profound control in his gesture. He's throwing down, you know, supposedly he inked, I think, five to eight of his comics a day. Like he would take all his time in doing the pencils, and then when he inks, he would throw them down as fast as possible. And his pencils weren't that tight either, so he's really pulling a lot of that material out of his head. And that's just something that I aspire to. I'm nowhere near as good as my heroes, but I learn from them, and I aspire to be that good. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be that good, I'm sure. Another one of my heroes is Mike Mignola, or Mignola, as I like to refer to him. Hellboy is a great study of the binary black and white. And Mignola's inking is the opposite of Watterson. That's why I love having two heroes that are so different from each other. You know, Mignola plans every black speck on the page first at the penciling phase. It's designed to the nth degree. It is completely calculated. It is completely researched. His pencils are very tight, and then basically he's just tracing it down with these thin, lifeless markers, and he gets amazing results also. And so he almost represents the other end of that spectrum, where his talent comes out in what he plans and in his deliberation and in his calculation of what he's going to do with that. And I'd put in between those two styles, I would put my other hero, my third hero, Jeff Smith, who's kind of the, you know, there's clearly a lot of planning in his blacks and whites, and there's a careful line there, but it's still cartoony, and there's a lot of life in that brush line. So between those three heroes of comics of mine, I've got it pretty well covered. Well, it's hard to talk about my art because I feel very trapped by my art. I mean, all I can really do is what I do on any given book. And I've looked back on some of my earlier books and I've seen panels that are really good, and I couldn't do those today. So it kind of scares me. I think, am I de-evolving? Am I getting formulaic or picking up weird habits that I can't do anymore? And the answer is yes, I'm progressing as an artist. And every book is kind of a snapshot of where I am that year. I think I'm getting a little bit better at knowing my weaknesses, and sometimes in trying to work around those weaknesses, the art gets worse. Sometimes it gets better. And one of my weaknesses, for instance, is I can't reduce things in my mind. Like, I can't see the page smaller. So I'll tend to add too much detail in grays in big panels, and when it reduces down, it turns into this big gray blotch, which is kind of defeats the purpose of using ink and brush. And my heroes, they seem to really be able to design a good panel, you know, at that 11 by 17 size, and you shrink it down to a normal comic page, and it tightens it, and it clarifies it, and it makes a stronger statement. So that's my art side. Is you know, I'm shackled. Maybe I'm getting better. Maybe I'm getting worse in some things. Maybe I'm in a rut. But I have fun with it. Every time I put that brush down on the page, I'm having fun, and my thoughts are, you know, singularly focused on that task at hand. The rest of life goes away. My problems with paying rent or with family or God, it's just like you're just like you in that line, and it's a beautiful time in my life. Writing, I feel like I've gotten much better at writing. I've studied a lot more writing. I've read probably more than I ever have in the last 15 years, both classic storytelling structure and new authors. And I kind of go back to, you know, my storytelling is it's very me. I'm very comfortable with that too. I feel like it's my statement that I have to say. And on any given year, it becomes a kind of a snapshot of where I'm at, which is a lot like the art side of things. You know, and a lot of how I approach my writing is very similar to my drawing. You know, I'll lay down a structure first, which is kind of like a sketch. You know, it's like penciling a page. I'll lay down the major plot points first, and then I'll fill in the detail. And the detail can't rescue a poor structured story in the same way that the details of an ink drawing cannot rescue a poorly structured drawing. So I'm learning a lot more about how to fill in detail and how to write stronger structure. The same problem that I have with my inking, where I gray things out too much. I put too much detail on the page because I'm not thinking of the reduction of what that that big thing is going to be when we step away from that panel. And the same with my story. I'll often think about the scene and just be, writing dialogue for just the scene and not thinking of the big story. So I'm putting these details in it's just going to gray the page and gray the story and gray the understanding of what I'm going for and take it off topic from its clearest plot point that it could be. So I'm still learning on both. Getting better, hopefully, and probably getting worse in some areas, but I'm here to tell stories, so here we go.